that we can look at the LOEM dashboards from again, these will all be in the same location, the C email reporting and subfolded dashboards. These will all be in a zip file that will need to be unzipped to this specific location in order for the imports and processing to work correctly. The LOEM dashboards has one general macro button to click. We get our general warning that we're about to run a macro. Type Y to proceed. And if the memory doesn't slow us down in the PC, this should actually be fairly quick. It's worth noting, reminding once again that all of these pivot tables are going to be based on exported text, or specifically CSV files, that will go to the email reporting location. If we go back to that window, up one level, back to the email reporting folder, general location. Again, our computer memory is the only thing slowing us up here, but you can see the various CSV files that go into that. So you can open any of these files and create your own pivot tables. If there's a problem with the summary totals, you can look at them in these actual CSV files. And also all of the dashboards, this is done running fine now. Yep, we get a complete message. That actually should run more quickly if we didn't have as many documents open. So there are a number of different pivot tables that are part of this, but they are all going to be based on the same set of data. And you can also change any of the criteria. They have fixed selections where you may want to change a quarter number or a month number. The regions are already defined. However, if you go into any pivot table and select the data source, you can see that they're all going to be basically reflect in any of the pivot tables. A copy the CSV file data is imported into the pivot table document, and then the dashboard document, and then it's copied. You can see here it's in the tab named Data, and so when we go to the Data tab, which is here, you can see, again, nice memory slowness. So again, back to the Data tab, we can see the campaign name and segment, and then all of the metrics that are part of that. So we can build any pivot table based on that, and again, if there are any problems with the data, they'll be reflected there. And most of anything that are problems are going to be based on what was input into the cell matrix as part of that we looked at earlier, where you are putting all of the Omniture tags and their associated campaigns and segment names and various other categories. So if something's left out there, for example, if we didn't correctly label a trigger, we didn't label something a trigger, it would lead to inaccuracies in the output data, and thus the pivot tables corresponding with the output CSV files. The other, we'll close this down, memory for us. The other pivot tables or dashboards, which are a lot smaller, so hopefully I'll run a little more quickly. The acquisition working document, which has summaries. Let's pull that document open. Again, same location. Get the general warning, run the macro. It pulls in the CSV file, formats the data, puts it into the data tab, asks for a week that we want to show. We've got 4 weeks of data, so we will enter 4, and that will all be in the pivot table tab. Again, you can always look at the underlying data for any problems or for validation specifics when compare this to the actual email bookings report if you compile some of those codes. And finally, there is the web-driven economics pivot tables. And that one, again, should be fairly simple. One button click, Y to proceed, and it's actually ordinarily probably only takes seconds. If we're having some slowness memory with the PC, you get a date, a week selection, so we'll select week 4. Again, that all those things only affect the display of the data. Pivot table's fixed. It's got acquisition net sales, retention net sales. These could be a single. These are 2 pivot tables based on the same data from the data tab. So you could create different pivot tables, and you could alter these pivot tables. For any pivot table you want to alter, you can reveal the field list and the pivot table options, which everybody is familiar with, and you could select any different values or different filters depending what you want to show. So the other items are not pivot tables, but worth pointing out here. Part of 2 of the other outputs that the Microsoft Access database does output, it will check to see what Omniture tags are in the email bookings, the daily email bookings, which we've already covered formatting here, and will output in these missing Omniture codes for export. So you can see a quick list of codes that are found in the email bookings report but aren't found in the cell matrix in the campaign table daily main file that feeds into the Microsoft Access database. So there's only a handful of codes here that I think are not going into our current pivot tables or dashboards, but anything that's not there will simply look and output those that so you would know to add them to the cell matrix if there are bookings associated with them, but they haven't been put into your campaign table daily cell matrix tab. So, and the other one is the missing campaign segments for export. Same concept. It's outputting campaign segments that are showing up in the performance by segment report that we formatted earlier and put into the campaign table daily. It's finding things that are, so it would mean anything that actually launched had some email metrics associated with it, but that was not entered into, again, the cell matrix. Most of these are ones that aren't critical to our current pivot tables dashboards as we have them, but if you do need to add it, this will output the campaign name, the segment name, and then also the responses folder, so you can find the campaign name in that folder and look at the associated link table so you can get the Omniture tags and enter all of that information into the campaign table like we did earlier. So I think covers most of the outputs. Again, any errors, discrepancies are generally going to be due to data not being entered correctly in the cell matrix, which is really the arbiter for everything in terms of both linking the correct segment to its correct associated Omniture code, but also any of the categorization that gets done there. For example, delineating it correctly to the correct trigger name, as well as some of the other items that go into the pivot tables. So that will need to be manually monitored and updated upon any new launches. Currently there's 3,500 to 3,600 rows in that in the cell matrix. Probably only about 1,000 or 1,100 of them are associated with bookings currently in the current quarter.